Welcome back. In this video, we're going to continue talking about the grocery cart model for thinking about life's demands and the cost of everyday activities. Remember, in the first video, we talked about how kids get a limited amount of mental energy to spend during every day. Everything in life has a cost, and those costs can stack up quickly if we're not careful about our shopping. In this video, we're going to talk about knowing the purpose for our shopping and how much different items in the cart might cost. Suppose you went shopping and bought a whole bunch of stuff, and when you got to the checkout line, you didn't have enough money to pay for it all. What are you going to do? If there's no ATM, we can't get more money. We probably need to start taking some stuff out of the cart. But which stuff to take? Would you reach in blindly and remove the first thing you touched? That wouldn't make sense. It depends on what you need the most, or the least. It might help to think about the purpose for why you're shopping. If I have an apple and some chocolate in my cart, which one comes out? Well, if the purpose of my shopping is to buy healthy snacks for my kids' lunch, then the apple stays and the chocolate's out. But if the reason I'm shopping is to make chocolate cake for my kid's birthday, then the chocolate stays in and the apple is out. So what does this have to do with kids' thinking and learning and behavior? Well, suppose some students are learning a new lesson in class. The students are expected to sit still, listen to the teacher speak, and understand the lesson. They might need to copy notes from the board and stay focused even though some of the other kids in class are making noise. One of the students in the class doesn't look so happy. Maybe she's got too much in her cart. Ask yourself, what is the purpose of this shopping trip? To learn. Be more specific. To listen and understand some of the vocabulary and concepts that are being taught. So you look into the cart and you realize that you really do need the students to hear and listen well and also understand what you're saying. It would help if they weren't distracted so that they could focus more easily. We should think of ways to manage that. It doesn't really matter if they copy notes from the board. Let's take that out of the cart for now. You can always post the notes online later. Some of the students prefer to stand while they're learning. I guess sitting isn't an important grocery for this lesson. Let's take that out too. Knowing the purpose of the shopping helps us be proactive in keeping the costs down because we can be careful not to put any extra groceries in the cart and only shop for what we absolutely need. When you think about shopping, it's always important to remember that each specific context or situation matters. Your shopping list and priorities could change minute by minute, subject by subject, or day by day. Suppose it was Halloween last night and most of the students stayed up late and ate too much candy. Many of the students may be coming to school with less mental energy this morning. Maybe it's not such a great day to shop for a new science lesson. Unlike real shopping in a grocery store, the cost of one activity can be different for each individual. Some things are cheap and some are expensive. When thinking about the cost, start with the obvious ones, the ones you know just by observing or knowing the child. If a child has difficulty holding a pencil properly, it's pretty safe to assume that holding a pencil and doing anything with that pencil is going to be expensive. It'll be more expensive for that child than for other kids who don't have trouble holding their pencils. Taking handwriting or drawing and coloring and copying, possibly even cutting or typing out of a task, could significantly reduce your costs and leave that student with more money to spend on other things. For many kids, which activities are expensive and which are cheap is not so obvious, but there may be ways to gather this information. Assessments like those done by a psychologist, a speech pathologist, an occupational therapist, or an educational specialist are often full of information about what is cheap and what is expensive for the child they assessed. You can use this information to start making a list of items that are cheap and items that are expensive so you can watch for them. Observing a child and collecting data is another great way to gather information about costs. Be sure to look for the patterns. One last factor that you should always consider is familiarity, habit, or routine. For most people, a familiar routine or place or activity will be cheaper than an unfamiliar one. If a child has practiced a particular activity, the cost of doing that activity will be cheaper than doing an activity that she hasn't practiced at all. A familiar schedule, or a layout of a worksheet, or classroom seating arrangement can all reduce demands for a child's mental energy. Doing the same task in a different environment might change a child's performance because the demands for mental energy may have suddenly increased. Think about driving. When I drive to my office, the cost is cheap because I've been driving for many years, and I've had the same car for a long time. I've also driven the same route to my office hundreds of times. Because driving to my office is well rehearsed, I can usually afford to spend some of my leftover mental energy talking on my hands-free phone while I drive. But when I'm driving to a new location, I rarely talk on the phone because my mental energy is already taxed and I risk missing an important turn or a stop sign. Knowing that repetition, rehearsal, and routine makes things cost less is valuable because we can use them to make an expensive day cheaper. To the extent that we can build consistency and routine, make a task or situation familiar, the less the day costs and the more mental energy a child has left over for other important tasks during the day. Considering the costs of different skills in different contexts helps us see that life is more complicated than whether a child can or cannot do a task. It really depends. Many children can do some things sometimes, but not always. And this doesn't necessarily mean that they aren't trying hard enough. Context matters, and so does the cost of the other items in the cart. If you found this video helpful, then please hit the like button or subscribe and share with others. To continue learning about the grocery cart model and what goes in a kid's cart, check out the next video.